You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com or watch us live on your smart TV, your YouTube and LinkedIn on the WCEG Network or Facebook and Twitter at WCEG Talk Radio. Good evening. Welcome to another session of Wisdom Wednesdays. I am your host, William Bill Edwards, and I have the distinct pleasure today of having engaging and constructive conversation with a person that I consider a great friend of mine and an outstanding public service, and that is none other than the Fulton County Solicitor General, the Honorable Keith Gammage. Keith, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Mayor.
Well, good. We usually start our show at 6, but you're such a big personality, we had to wait on you.
Well, so, I apologize, sir. I feel almost like a mayor rather than a solicitor general because the mayors are always showing up a little bit after the start time. So I'm feeling like a mayor today, but we were doing the county's business, and thank you for holding for us.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do what you said. What were you doing tonight?
Well, I'll tell you, BOC meetings, as you know, as a former commissioner here in Fulton County, happen on Wednesdays, first and third Wednesday. And today, one of the topics was how do we work together to continue to build upon plans that seek to reduce the jail population with a foundation in keeping us all safe. And that's a big deal and a big topic. And
we're going to have that conversation later on in the show. But right now, let's let people know about Keith Gammage. Who is Keith Gammage? And, where you're from and your educational background. Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Okay. Thank you again for having me. I would start by saying Keith Gammage seeks to be someone who loves and fears the Lord, who tries his very best to be the best servant of God. I'm a family man raised between Southwest Atlanta and East Point. My parents relocated here following really the American dream, like so many folks did a generation ago, coming back to the South, to Atlanta. They brought me when I was 1 year of age with my older brother. I have a wonderful, loving wife and a 5-year-old son. They both are my heartbeat. And in this role as Solicitor General, I get the real opportunity to help people on a policy level and individually. I was honored to attend the great Southern University down in Baton Rouge, one of our premier HBCUs, both undergrad and law school there. And Mayor, I returned home with really an abiding spirit to serve the community. Started as a public defender in Fulton County, representing folks with serious violent felonies, and then became a prosecutor, worked my way up to being in a leadership role, and then ran for office following in your footsteps, Mayor Edwards, and was elected Solicitor General by Fulton County voters back in 2016.
Well, great. That is outstanding. I don't know about that great Southern University thing, but we'll accept it since you're a guest on the show tonight. Keith, let's talk about this. Everybody, we go to the polls, and we got this thing on the ballot called Solicitor General. All right, and I would say that most people who go are asking in their mind, well, what does he really do? All right, talk to us a little bit about the office and what are you responsible for, so people can get a good idea of what the Solicitor General really does.
Thank you for a great question. So everyone knows what the district attorney does. District attorney handles felonies, and in large counties within our state, we have both a misdemeanor prosecutor, that is the Solicitor General, and the district attorney, who obviously handles felonies. So for the elected Solicitor General, our range is the same as the DA's. That is to say that I represent the entire county, not a single district, but the entire county in each of the 15 wonderful cities that make up our glorious Fulton County. The misdemeanor elected prosecutor and role of Solicitor General, we handle such cases as DUI, thefts up to $1,500 worth of value in a theft, shoplifting as well, stolen automobiles up to $1,500, domestic violence cases. cases involving illegal firearms, and believe it or not, most of the other 100 or so various traffic and other misdemeanor offenses. One of the big deals to your audience is right now in Fulton County, we have more than 10,000 criminal misdemeanor cases involving domestic violence, more than 5,000 pending criminal cases involving allegations of drunk driving, several hundred illegal firearm cases right now involving the improper use, shooting, and brandishing or pointing those firearms at victims. So it's important work. In this role, we really are serving the interests of justice also, Mr. Mayor, because what you'll find is that the experts will tell us that the folks who first commit a crime, it's not usually a murder or an armed robbery. It's usually either a juvenile offense or a misdemeanor. So if we can turn them around here, give them the right restoration and correction and the right measure of punishment and correction, we get that right, we'll reduce recidivism and protect the public.
You spoke of 1,500 as the limit. I guess anything above that would be a felony. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And would be over at the DA's office. You mentioned a word that I want to talk about a little bit more, because everybody in your capacity, they always talk about that word recidivism. How are you looking in your area? How is the issue of recidivism doing in so far as percentage-wise? People that you see come back.
So that's a great question. I will tell you this, and for your audience, education, and it's the root of your question. Education is the clearest pathway to opportunity. And we have a high number of people who don't complete a high school education. Many of them drop out in about the 10th or 11th grade. And that's really one of the biggest indications of whether or not they're going to land, unfortunately, in prison. And so for the recidivism in Georgia right now, it is a rough number of about 30%. About 30% of folks who go to prison return to prison. That's a rough general estimate across Georgia. And many folks in the system are working to reduce that recidivism. But I wanted to start by highlighting that education is really the primary key out of the criminal arena.
So how do you, as a solicitor, how can you impact? What programs can you give to help impact that recidivism rate as it stands today? I mean, you could just say, okay, it's a misdemeanor, and we're going to deal with you and see you later. But I think that maybe you go, and I know that you do, you go a little bit farther in helping to get that education and kind of curb that recidivism rate.
Yes, sir. We have to first protect the public. And so by that, I mean, we have to distinguish and make judgments based on information. Is the individual who's charged in front of us, are they a real threat to public safety? And if we determine that they are, then we have to use our resources to protect the public. And that might mean with a misdemeanor, a person faces up to 12 months in jail for every single misdemeanor count. But the great number of those folks, to your point, sir, are people who may have just made a mistake. Maybe they didn't get the right values in their home. Maybe they didn't have the right support. Maybe they became involved in drug use and other illicit activities that help to take them off track. For those individuals who we make a judgment that we really can try to save and turn around, we have many diversion programs, some of which are at no cost to the person who's accused, where we would target them toward GED programs. And in exchange for them earning their GED, perhaps taking an anger management course. If it's a domestic issue, it's going to involve a more involved course called family violence intervention to stop people who are in relationships from fighting each other. It's preparing them by giving them those skills, investing in the person with love and teaching them responsibility, but also having guardrails in place such that if they choose not to take these restorative opportunities that we provide, then there's another pathway. And that pathway is more like zealous prosecution. Our rate of reducing recidivism over the last 4 years in Fulton County with the cases we've had that have gone through our diversion program, we have about a 7% recidivism rate, which means a 93% success rate of folks who don't come back and reoffend over the course of 5 years.
One thing I do know that you do, and I think the audience will be glad to hear it, you are very active in this issue of expunging people's records. Talk to the public a little bit about this expungement process and what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. And we partnered together and worked on expungement initiatives together in South Fulton and across the county. So basically, there is a category or criteria of offenses that the law allows to be expunged or restricted from a person's record. When I started back in 2017 as Solicitor General, it was completely unheard of for prosecutors to be leading the charge toward removing these old nonviolent records and expunging them. But it's the prosecutor's pen that actually has the authority to remove that record, even more so than a judge. And so we started to build initiatives and partner across the county with churches, faith leaders, other electeds, and bring these programs everywhere from, believe it or not, we had an expungement desk set up in Greenbrier Mall. We had them all through Buckhead, all across the county, over on Metropolitan Parkway, everywhere where the people are in need of this opportunity. And what we did by doing so is removed really the burden that people used to have to undertake. Because you used to have to go hire a lawyer and go through a long and lengthy process of going through the courts just to get it to a prosecutor's desk. When we brought those opportunities to the community, it made it readily available. And then building on that, we then set up a website, FultonRestorativeJustice.org. You go to it right now, FultonRestorativeJustice.org, and you can actually apply for an expungement online from your home. My office will do the investigation and determine whether or not you're entitled to an expungement. And if you are, we'll give you one and then present it to a judge to actually seal that record. The law provides for these old, in particular, non-violent criminal records that have held people back for years, that we can erase them. For, in a general sense, sir, if a person has an arrest, like many people have an arrest, and they've not had a subsequent arrest for 5 years, they may be entitled to an expungement. If they have had an arrest for something nonviolent, like marijuana possession, or for a petty theft, that could be holding them back from gainful employment, they have an opportunity to apply at our office if it occurred in Fulton County. And if we can expunge or restrict that record, we'll do it. And I'm proud to say, sir, that we also, 3 years ago, worked, believe it or not, in a bipartisan way with Governor Kemp to actually help them to expand in Senate Bill 288, which Governor Kemp signed, to expand the rights to folks, some of whom even have nonviolent felonies, to have their records expunged or restricted under certain criteria. It is, for the public, I will say, you know, people who've been charged with rape, murder, armed robbery, they're not candidates for this. This is a second chance opportunity for people who've been rehabilitated, made a mistake, and there's a criteria that we follow. That website again is Fulton, Fulton, Restorative, Restorative, FultonRestorativeJustice.org.
That's a wonderful program, and I've been following that program ever since I was at Fulton County. You know, but Keith, you do a lot of stuff, but the average citizen says, you're trying people to do misdemeanors, you're trying people to do other things. What's your motivation for going outside the box, and trying to make sure that people don't fall short of what they need to be? What is that motivation?
We're in a special place. I grew up in Atlanta, and between East Point, Atlanta, South Fulton, and there were so many leaders here from Andy Young to Bill Edwards to Maynard Jackson, to so many people who really built a template and a model. And then I had great parents who said, do more and give more and thank God for your blessings by giving more. And I just really mean the truth of it. It's a great joy to be a public servant and to be able to help people in the ways that we can when we're in these positions of authority. They elected us to do more than just a 9 to 5. I want to really do my part, sir, like you have, to make the world better as much as I can. And doing these things that are extra, like expungements, record restrictions. We do, as you know, this anti-gun violence message called Guns Down, Heads Up. We partner with Probate Court Chief Judge Kenya Johnson. We've been doing a summer of peace where we are teaching young people to make better choices, not pick up these firearms. The truth is it improves the community for all of us. And sir, it actually feels good to give back.
Mm-hmm. Now, and that's great. You do a fantastic job in terms of service. I always tell people, if you want to be good at anything, just serve. I mean, if you want to be a good preacher, just serve. If you want to be a good doctor, just serve. You have no problem. So you're doing an outstanding job of doing. Let's drop back a little bit and talk a little bit about our youth. How do you see them coming through your courts, and what are we doing to help them to be better? And then the bigger thing is too, Keith, is that once they're in the system, you have no choice but to incarcerate them. Do we forget about them? Do we let them do their time until they come out, and then we try to put them in a program? Then talk a little bit about that, because I think we can be a little bit proactive even when a person is in jail.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We've got to invest more in our young people. So many, and we have to be more responsible. So many of our young men in particular are growing up in homes where they need a male role model. So our men have to be more responsible in many respects. We have to make better choices and value decisions in relationships that produce children. And then we all have to invest in them from the beginning, right? From the cradle. And then when we are in our various capacities, like you do in your community, when we're in our various capacities, we have to volunteer at schools, both men and women, and be an example in the community, in the church, in the civic organization, in the schools. We've got to give examples to young people that are positive role models that they can follow. I know that seems basic and simple, but there's so many young people who actually don't have an appropriate model to follow. It's why we've got to be volunteering at schools, going to career days. We've got to be involved in coaching and really helping those young people to make the right decision. We got to step out of what's normal to us in our regular comfort level, inside and outside of our family. And then in the system, we've got to be about providing second chances, good, well-paying American jobs. And we've got to teach people, especially our young people, that listen, if you break in this house, and if you don't get shot by the owner or you don't hurt somebody during the process of it, when you get caught, you can go do 20 years in prison. And the flat screen TV or the iPhone or whatever it is that you would have stolen, you're going to be earning about 3 cents a day sitting in that jail cell in the prison. It's messaging also. We've got a message to our community, especially young people, that there are so many opportunities out here if we get a good education and then we seize these opportunities. We listen to our parents and our family members, we stay in school, but all of us are going to make mistakes. Some of us got caught, some of us didn't. That's just the truth of it, if we'll admit it, right? If we'll just admit it, some of us got away with some things.
Yeah, you're right.
And we got to remember that.
Yeah. All right, we got one question for you. Mr. Lawrence going to tell you what it is.
Are there any mentoring programs for our youth, especially young males outside of school? If so, what are they?
Yeah, let me name a couple that work really well. There is one that a lawyer by the name of Mawuli Davis, M-A-W-U-L-I, Mawuli Davis. runs. It's called Let Us Make Man. Let Us Make Man. They meet every Monday at the YMCA on Camilton Road. I think if you Google Let Us Make Man, it will show up, their website will show up. And they will take young people in under their wings. It's really rooted in, it's really Black men working together to try and mentor and provide factual, cultural centered truth to young men, and to work with folks who may be at risk, if you will, or just need a little bit more help. There's a legal component to it. There are other components. Let Us Make Man. Derek Bozeman also is part of that program.
Yeah, Maui is a good attorney, good person, good servant. His daddy was a Harlem Globetrotter.
That's right. That's right. He had a great jump shot.
Yeah.
Maui plays a little basketball too.
Yeah, I don't know that, but I know his daddy was with the Globetrotters.
May I add one more?
Sure.
The 100 Black men of Atlanta and of South Fulton, and probably DeKalb County, I'm sure as well, they have a youth mentoring program where they're really investing in young people. And I'm sure you can find that at the 100 Black Men's website, 100 Black Men of Atlanta or South Fulton's website. They're doing some fantastic work. And then if the audience member wants to call my office, I'd be happy to try to be helpful. I'm at 404-612-4800, 612-4800, and I'd offer myself if I can be helpful also.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't say Kappa Alpha Psi.
I know, because you're a good brother of Alpha Phi Alpha, I didn't want to come on with it, but since you mentioned it,
go ahead.
There is the fantastic Kappa League of Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated. You could call me for that as well. And Brother Mauli Davis, who you just mentioned, also as being a great brother, is a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated.
Okay, well, that's good. That's enough Kappa stuff tonight. Talk to me about what's the makeup of your office? How many employees do you have? What do they do? How is it segmented?
Yeah, thank you for that question. One of the things I've been most proud of, it's really amazing to me. I'm a lawyer. We have 50 lawyers that work for us. 30 law enforcement professionals who are post-certified law enforcement officers, a number of paralegals and administrative folks. So I'll start with the lawyers, because I get to hire a lot of folks who are fresh out of law school, and they want to do good, and they want to serve, and they want to be prosecutors. They also want to pour into the community, keep it safe, and provide second chances where appropriate. And so a lot of those fresh young folks who went to Morehouse or Clark or Spelman or Southern, then went to law school, they're knocking on their door down here at my office for their first job as a lawyer. And it's a great place to get some great training and become a new lawyer. And then we've got these paralegals, many of whom are mothers and aunts, oftentimes ladies in their 50s or 60s who've been with the county 20 or 25 years. They're really like they're mamas and aunts. And they're doing all of the paperwork to process it and make sure it's accurate and appropriate, filing all of the court documents and what's called discovery, which is the information that tells a person what the evidence is against them. All of that's now electronic. We moved from the old paper filings to a completely electronic system when the pandemic hit. And those wonderful ladies are doing that. Our post-certified law enforcement officers are out serving subpoenas. Sometimes they're gonna come to the door of some of your audience members, knock on the door and serve them a subpoena for court. They may be victims, witnesses in crime. And those are the major categories. Of course, we got receptionists who answer the phone. And I want you to know this in your audience. One of the things I'm also proud of, every one of my chief assistants, which is the second in command in any elected prosecutor's office, every one of the chief assistants I've had since being in office, there's been two. Kenya Johnson, who's now a judge, and then there's my current chief, her name is Andrea Allaby. Both of those individuals and my chief of staff have all been females. And And we've got to look to, to put people of diverse backgrounds in these important leadership positions and mentor people like I've been mentored by folks like you, Mayor Edwards and others. And I'm very proud of that. And the makeup of our office with these different perspectives, we have a very diverse office because the constituency that we serve is diverse, right? There's LGBTQ, there's young, there's old, there's millennials, white, black, north, south, all of that. We have all of that right here in the office. And we're really trying to promote a very diverse background, not just in race, gender, ethnicity, but also in perspective and worldview so that we can sharpen each other's ideas.
When you talk about 10,000 domestic relations issues and another 5,000 illegal driving, things of that nature, I seem to think in my mind that, we're really clogging up the judicial system in terms of getting all that stuff, because a lot of time in domestic relations position, it don't have to be a fight. I mean, it could still be something mental. Would you agree? There still could be a domestic relation. How do we, we got our courts are backlogged, especially since COVID-19. How do we give credence to that as we move forward in your department?
That's a very astute question. If we start at this extreme with a misdemeanor, here's a factual scenario. I'll give you this example and then quickly give you another one. Defendant, Mr. Smith, comes home from work, he's had a hard day. He is not so happy about his place of employment. He's had 4 or 5 drinks and a little bit of cocaine tonight. His wife and the children are getting on his nerves. His dinner wasn't prepared at time when he came home to sit down, so he snaps, strikes her by punching her in the mouth. The little child, who's 9-year-old little girl, calls the police because this is an ongoing thing that happens every couple of days or every couple of weeks. She calls the police. Once she goes to call the police, the defendant then chokes his wife, throws her to the ground, snatches the telephone from the little girl who's calling out for help and screaming in the background on the 911 call, takes the phone from the little girl, throws her to the ground. Law enforcement officer shows up. The female has a black eye. The little girl's hiding in the closet crying. Female's got strangulation marks around her neck. And during the course of the attack, the defendant, the male, said, "I'm going to kill you." And he's got a house full of guns. That's one extreme that we see. Mm-hmm. The other extreme, to your point, sir, is people who just might not get along. This other person on the other extreme is 22 years of age, and the guy is seeing another young lady on the side. His girlfriend wants to see his phone. He tries to keep the phone from her. She slaps him to get the phone. A neighbor sees it and calls the police. Now, you see the vast difference in those two scenarios. Mm-hmm. The domestic relations case where these two young people, they need some training and some coping skills, maybe some anger management. If there's a child, maybe a parent in class, because this outburst provides an opportunity for us to pour into them and get some redirection. They don't even need to be arrested. Maybe some kind of summons that gets them some help from the system. Coping skills. Now, this other scenario I painted, that person's got, 10 years they did in prison, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other records on their rap sheet. We have to handle that differently. But that's the vast range of cases with everything you can imagine in the middle, even the mental health or emotional kind of cursing and being at each other, usually because of either alcohol, drugs, lack of finances, or some kind of mental health issue. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff is going on together in a big gumbo, and we're sorting through it all with limited resources and trying to make the right decisions to protect the public, to protect the people, and then also be fair to everybody. So you're right, we need more mediation, which is really what I think you're alluding to. We need more mediation.
I am. Under that same scenario, let's say the husband gets that same night at that time gets put in jail. Okay. We got a family out there that needs help. Is it your duty to help that family, or is it police duty to notify defects in the case of a child, or whose responsibility, or is it a joint responsibility?
No, that's a great point. It is a joint responsibility. It begins, you're going to be surprised when I say this, I think, and I know your audience will. It begins with the human beings in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We all have to figure out the right way to deal with the people we love and the people in our lives and the people in the broader community. But when there's a breakdown and the police show up at a home, then they have to use their discretion to decide whether to make an arrest or whether there's some alternative. We're moving more toward, believe it or not, we're way behind with it, but moving more toward officers not making an arrest decision and actually having some additional resources. In Fulton County right now, we've got something called the pre-arrest diversion program that we've invested in, where officers can decide not to arrest a person, but they can target them towards some resources. And believe it or not, some of those folks will respond with a mental health crisis team right there on the scene. We don't have as many folks doing that particular work through the pre-arrest diversion program. Their resources are very limited. We need to expand it. I hope that does happen. I think it will. But they're providing alternatives to an arrest. Used to be that you just show up, you know, there's some domestic issue, the cops take the man to jail. Now there's some improvements, but yeah, it's the police officers' initial discretion based on the factors they're looking at. The threat for public safety, the concern, if no arrest is made. Sometimes they're saying, let me diffuse the situation and arrest the person who appears to be the initial aggressor. And then secondly, when it comes to the court system, there's been a cooling off phase. And so now the prosecutors have an opportunity, along with the public defenders or the hired defense attorney, to examine the actual evidence and make some, charging decisions. If it's a prosecutor, to charge, to dismiss, to offer a diversion program or anger management. All of that also involves speaking with the alleged victim, communicating with the defendant's attorney, involving the judge, the judiciary, trying to really figure out the right resolution. But Mr. Mayor, it's all of our responsibility. I will tell you this too, though. It is the responsibility, in my opinion, of the community when you hear your neighbors or see your neighbors fighting. I'm not saying you run over there and get involved. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying, we should all get in other people's business. But those 10,000 cases of domestic violence that I mentioned pending right here in Fulton County, and they're happening every day. That's our neighbors and our cousins and our aunts and uncles and our loved ones and our coworkers. All of this is happening in all of these folks' lives. And if we know something like that is going on and we don't try to help find resources, then we may also be a part of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about money. That's all public record.
Always important.
What does it take to run your office? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but is it sufficient enough to do what you want to do? I think it's time for people who to understand what people like you do and be able to vocalize their support of you in terms of your budget.
Well, as an elected public servant, Mayor, when you were commissioner and as mayor, you invested in public safety and invested in second chances. And in 2017, I spent a lot, I'm just going to be very honest. I spent a lot of time working with members of the Board of Commissioners, working with the county management team to explain the value of the work of the Office of Solicitor General. And there was a bit of a learning curve. And that took a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of patience. And it took also a whole lot of hard work, because I made some commitments that my office would do certain things, that we become more efficient, that we more quickly move folks out of the jail who we could move out of the jail. And I said, with these additional resources, I'll do an even better job. I'll be able to pay better lawyers, keep better staff, if you make this investment. And incrementally, over the 5 years that I've now been here, the county has actually seen some of our results. So we did what we said we would do. And they also kept their commitment by investing in the office. Our budget went from about $6 million when I started to just about $10 million now. Yeah. That might sound like a lot of money to the audience, but it's really not to run the largest, most voluminous court docket in the southeastern region of the United States, from Miami all the way up past Charlotte, North Carolina, really almost to Chicago. There's not a busier court system than where we are right here, especially with misdemeanors, because whereas the DA has got several hundred murders pending right now, I think 500 and something murders pending. Oh, we've got less serious cases, if you will, but the volume is astronomical. Yeah. And so you have to have somebody, a prosecutor needs to have the time to read every single person's case, to call every single victim on a case, to actually spend the time to find out what really happened, to listen to 911 calls, to maybe go out to a home and investigate, take photographs. All of that's going on every single day, while we're also serving subpoenas to a lot of people don't want to even come to court. All of that's happening all at the same time. And so the county commissioners have actually been true to their word and the spirit of working together. And we still need more resources. And during this pandemic backlog, we kept working here in Fulton County. And I know that's the case in some of the municipalities around our county. Other places, there was more of a stoppage. But we kept working. We just did it virtually, but not to the extent that we had been performing before that pandemic because of social distancing and all those challenges. Crime went up too. More people off work, more people at home, more people coming actually to Georgia from other cities because of the difference in restrictions over the last 2 years. And they were committing crimes. And so that's caused caseloads and dockets to go up and increase. And to sort of close out your point, in politics and in governance, you have to figure out ways to build relationships that are based on trust and integrity. And then you have to use the resources that you have for the benefit of the community. And you have to show that you can do it. And as a result, I believe other conscientious public servants, city council members or commissioners, whatever area you're in, will make an investment in those offices, and it'll be to the betterment of the community. If I can say you this lastly on this point, I know I'm long-winded. If I can make the time and take the time with a heavy caseload to see a case that involves a young person committing an alleged offense at the school, rather than charge that person, we need to have the time and the resources to pick up the telephone, to call their parents, even if they're 17 years old and in high school, that's considered adult in Georgia, 17. We need to be able to call their parents, call the school resource officer and say, listen, is this a Crip or a Blood? Or is this a young Keith Gammage or a young Bill Edwards who just made a bad mistake that day? And can we save them, or are they a problem in your school? But we got to get through all these other cases to be able to find the time to make that call. Sure. So resources are critical. Money is key. Tax dollars are important.
Well, your friend Dolores has another question for you.
Are there any internship opportunities in your office?
That's a great question. We have an active internship program. We actually created an internship with the University of Georgia 2 years ago. And that's called our Bulldog Internship Program. And with UGA, they actually pay a stipend to their undergraduate students interested in law to come and work in our office. That's one program for college students. We also have one with high school students where around the summertime, we will reach out to various high schools and across Fulton County, and we will offer internships through them. I can provide the contact information for our intern coordinator. We've got a number of different opportunities and programs. There's an internship program with Atlanta University Center as well. And if the caller or the audience member has a specific question in particular about a certain age group for that internship, I'd like to try to answer that and plug them into the person in my office that could be helpful. And I'll tell you this too, I could be walking in the grocery store sometime and meet someone who says, you get to talking in line, the person says, hey, my son or daughter would like to work in the court system. They want to become a lawyer. I'm absolutely going to say, here's my number, here's my card, have them contact me. Let's see if we can plug them in. Judge Kenya Johnson at Probate Court has got a great program too. Our University of Georgia Bulldog program is one for students that are enrolled at UGA. So that's specific to them. The one at the AU Center right now is specific to Clark Atlanta University, but we were looking to expand it with the other AUC schools. And then the informal ones sort of work with John Marshall Law School, Georgia State University. And then we also partner with high schools. I'm going to give my number again. It's 404-612-4800, 612-4800, 404. If a parent or guardian or even young person is interested in a legal related internship, they can give us a call and we'll try to fashion something that works for them.
Ross, you have that number?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We're going to make sure we get that number out, Mr. Gammage.
Thank you.
You have, over the years that you've been here, you have done an outstanding job. And I've seen you grow, and I've seen you take that position and make something out of it, not just to be a solicitor, but be beyond solicitor. And it takes truly a man of God to really know that, to step outside that box and really give that kind of service. So I'm going to applaud you, sir. And if I had anything to do with it, I'm going to take credit.
Well-deserved credit, sir. You had a lot to do with it. Thank you for your mentorship.
Well, no problem. I think that your job now is to go on and mentor more. And that's just something I kind of put to you, a task, that you go out and make some more great Keith Gammages so that we can have. I'm getting old now, Keith.
You're looking younger every day.
Getting old now to let you guys kind of go ahead and get things done. But you have done a miraculous job, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of Kenya, proud of Fonnie. So many of you who have just done so well. And the reason I do this show is, the show is called Wisdom Wednesdays. And it's intentional that we call it that. I didn't talk to you about anything that's really negative. I don't talk to any of my guests. We had the sheriff on. I told him I don't want to know about the jail. I don't know who stabbed nobody. I don't want to know all that. I want to know about the good things that's happening that people don't see. And that's why I have you guys on. And it was important that you get on, because I know so many people who did not understand what solicitor was, but they went in there and voted on that thing because somebody told them to vote for Keith Gammage. So this information comes out, gives them wisdom, because I believe that a learned community, Keith, is the best community that you can have. And we now inundated with so many people who are using the internet and what's this thing next door and beyond what they were designed for, and preaching propaganda that divides us instead of really bringing us together. But you, sir, have done your job. You brought people together. You're doing a great job. And when you run again, I'm gonna vote 5 times if I can. When is your next race?
Next election is going to be May of 2024.
May of
I like your vote, and I like the vote of your audience members.
Stop being political on my show. Yeah. So, in closing, talk to us about where you're going in the future, what you want to do that you have yet not to do, but you have it in plan to do as you go along in your career.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I love serving, and what I want to do and haven't gotten to yet, and I pray that we will do it, is I want to have prosecutors. I mean, I'm talking about conscientious, community-minded lawyers working as prosecutors who are partnering with every one of our schools in the county, where there's a prosecutor as a resource for that school system, teaching rights and responsibilities in the school, how to avoid negative interactions with law enforcement, how to keep your hands off a gun, how to keep your hands off your girlfriend or your boyfriend in a negative way, right? Actually giving like an extra civics type of class, if you will, teaching the law in the classrooms, high schools or middle schools across our county, where there's actual curriculum that we put together, and we're working on the curriculum, so that we the law and information empowers people. So many young people I used to see get charged with armed robbery, and armed robbery would carry a 10-year minimum punishment. They had to go to jail for 10 years. They would take a BB gun, many of them, and steal a pizza by pointing that BB gun at someone. And they would get 10 years in prison. And I would say to them in schools, et cetera, if you knew you were facing that, would you have robbed that person of that pizza? Obviously, the answer is no. And I never forgot that I was seeing these folks, these young people in these bad situations. They shouldn't have been doing it anyway, but they certainly did not know what the stakes were. So teaching those rights and responsibilities, and that also is lastly a part of knowing how to interact with law enforcement. We got this great divide between the community and law enforcement officers. Heck, historically, especially in the Black community, for a whole host of valid reasons too. Teaching that to our young people. Here's the way you interact with a law enforcement officer and any elder or any person of authority, but especially a cop who actually is hopefully trying to be helpful in the community. Teaching those kinds of life skills is what I want to do more of as an extension of this role in our schools, and using that also to encourage people to stay in school and graduate.
When you talk about cops and the police, what's your interaction with them in terms of helping them to be more proficient in their jobs? Because they get a bad rap about a lot of things. Is there anything your office can do to help them to be better in what they do?
Yeah. One of my deputy prosecutors who I was with a little earlier today, Shelley Falk, longtime prosecutor, both in the felony lane and in misdemeanors, has been working as a liaison with our law enforcement partners, APD and other agencies across the county, to try and make sure that when you're making an arrest decision, you actually need to arrest a person. Rather than issue a citation, give them a ticket and a court date for nonviolent, low-level kinds of things when they're not a real public safety threat. Teaching them to make even better police reports so that when we catch a real criminal who's really a threat to us,
yeah,
we're working with them to make sure, working with the office to make sure those reports are tight, that they're gathering the correct evidence, that they're actually investigating the case. Because very, very often, our law enforcement officers who got a super difficult job, I salute them. Many of them, most of them are, heroes, the men and women of law enforcement. But they don't have always the very best training. Although training is ongoing, they're often making arrest decisions on the side of the road or in an alley or in the street somewhere under threat.
Right.
Okay. They want to get home safely too. They're not always thinking about how do I make this case in a way that's going to be perfect in court. And so we're working with them through my office to try and help. And the DA Willis is doing it as well, to try and help them make the best charging decision and make the tightest cases when they do arrest someone.
Well, Dolores has another question for you.
What is your ultimate career goal?
Oh.
I'm going to throw y'all a curveball with this. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for that question. I think it's to figure out how to deliver the very best of myself that I can in service to the community. What's the best way, and I believe I'm doing it right now. What's the best way that I can help the community? Our community during this drug war years back, so many people got the book thrown at them. And now, a few years later, you know, a couple decades later, now we have programs that say, hey, the person who may have gotten, you know, addicted to drugs, whether they be pills or crack cocaine like it was 20 years ago, maybe they're not a real criminal and they actually need some help first. That's what we're saying now. We weren't saying that back then. The point I'm making is I saw so many people who I grew up with, played sports with, that ended up, you know, experimenting with some of these heavy drugs, and the system threw them away, threw the book at them. And those are the people's records we're expunging right now, so they can get a second chance. When I say serve in a way that can deliver the very best of me, it's to be mindful of what God's purpose is. It's to be in a role where I can help people, set policies, touch people's lives. And I believe I'm doing it right now. And whatever that continues to be, that's really what I want to be doing.
Well, last question for you, and I'm going to put you on the spot here to some degree. Usually in our judicial system, the ugly word of racism shines its head. How do you feel? Do you feel that in the judicial system, or what can we do to make sure that it doesn't occur in that system?
Every system is a reflection of the world we live in, right? And so when there's white supremacy and racism and gender bias and elitism and and ageism, right? When that's in our society, it's in every system in the society. Classism, so you can put me on record saying this. The system isn't fair. But those of us in positions of authority are working to try and make it a better, more equitable system. The values that people, and it's really important. I believe this. I believe the value of humanity for everyone is equal. But if we have folks who are looking through a lens or a set of eyes that doesn't value Bill Edwards the way they value someone in North Fulton, then that's a problem. And we have to address it and be open about it and honest about it. The person who, you know, has less education, maybe African-American or Latino, has less money, they're absolutely less likely to get the same justice as the person of wealth. We all know that. Those of us in the system have to balance that. So every year we have a training on racial sensitivity. And believe it or not, even though I'm a Black man growing up in the South who, look, we all experience racism. All experience being racially profiled. You know, whether I got this suit on or not, I'm a Black man in America in the South. In a world where Trump was the president. And we have to be honest. Be honest and work to change it and call it out when we see it and be a balance against it. And one of the other challenges, you never know. Listen, I'm gonna tell you this. This is not exactly the question. I'm gonna tell you this. There are times when I wonder, I got this great idea. And here's a way we can implement this great idea. And somebody might shoot that idea down. I don't know, is it because I'm a Black man saying it? When this young person deserves the benefit of the doubt on the side of the road when a police officer has stopped him, is that cop just overbearing and being a jerk that day when he didn't have to arrest him and could have given him a ticket? Or is it racism? Some of these things we'll never know. But what we do know is the systemic effects of racism and oppression over years and years and years, the way that affects our economic system, the way it affects our educational system. Those are facts. And we have to do everything we can to address it. It's one of the reasons I'm glad I'm in this role. I can't catch all of these cases individually, but it's why we train people and why we check them and why we hold them accountable and why we try to be a system of checks and balances for law enforcement also to make sure the right things are happening with regard to these arrest decisions and that is fair and equitable.
Yes. Well, we really pleased that you came today, Keith, and talk to us about the wonderful thing that you are doing, and you know, you're just a great public servant, and I am truly proud of you. I want you to know that now. You know, that's built for you. You're truly proud of you. So today we've been talking to Mr. Keith Gammage, the Fulton County Solicitor, Southern University, man of Kappa Alpha Psi. And through it all, he has made it. So I'm just, before I go, I gotta tell you, that boy 5 years old already?
5 years old already, big boy too.
My God, man, that makes me feel older now.
Time is flying. I'm gonna have to bring him, let you talk with him,
Okay.
pour some knowledge in him.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, once again, thank you, Keith. We appreciate you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. God bless. Thanks for being a trailblazer.
You're doing, and you're going to be all right.
Thank you so much. Thanks to you, Mr. Lewis, for all of your work and for investing in us.
Thank you so much.
Don't boost up too much now, Keith. I got to stay around here. Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye-bye. God bless.
All right. All right. We're the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram, WCEG Network. And please subscribe to our WCEG Network channel. The topics and opinions are those of the show hosts and guests, and not WCEG Network. Thank you so much for your continued support.